Welcome to Drinking Bros, presented by GhostBed.com.
Yay! Welcome to Drinkin' Bros, kids. I'm down, I think, to my last week in North Carolina. It appears as if the house will be repaired by June 1st. So I'll be back in the studio forever after that. This hopefully is my last Zoom call, D'Anthony. But in the meantime, we got two monster guests on today that I am unbelievably amped about because this has been the hottest topic in our office for months and months and months. We got Michael Heller and James Salzman. How are you guys?
Great to be here.
Yeah, where are you guys at today?
Michael?
I'm in New York City, in Manhattan.
I am in Santa Barbara, California. We are coast to coast.
Wow, coast to coast. We're talking about NFTs today, kids. How many times, are you guys getting hit up with this question every single day of what is an NFT?
Let me explain it to you. You know what Bitcoin is? Bitcoin is fungible. It's like money. You can trade them. NFT stands for non-fungible token. So it's like a Bitcoin, but it's attached to a specific asset. That shot of Michael Jordan dunking the basketball that NBA Top Shot wants to sell, that NFT is attached to that particular, lets you own, in a sense, up to a point, that particular image of Jordan dunking.
Got it. And when did this all get started? Because I feel like there's been a gold rush of this in the last sort of 18 months. But I'm sure it's probably like the internet, where people have been working on this for years and years and years, and then it just got popular in the media.
No, you're right. It is brand new. It's actually newer than you think, and it's not like the gold rush. It's more like the tulip bulb mania. Like, this is like a crazy mania that just sort of popped up. If you guys remember, some of your listeners may remember, like the craze for ICOs, initial coin offerings, a couple of years ago. People sunk a lot of money into that before it all went poof. NFTs have a similar feel to them. You know, it might be the gold at the end of the rainbow, but it looks more like a tulip that'll like blossom into some, pretty red flower and not be worth quite as much.
Is that your honest thought on this? Because, right now we've had a bunch of guests on our show, athletes and whatnot, who are selling these NFTs at huge prices. We had one of the Gronkowskis on. His just sold for $1.2 million.
Yeah.
We've also gotten some calls for some other friends of ours. We won't say who they are because they're still in negotiations on those deals. But they're very big athletes, and they're looking to cash in on this. Is it smart for the athlete to take the money and run because you don't think this will be worth that much in the future?
That's exactly what they should be doing. Like, if someone's going to pay you $1 million for an NFT, you know what we should do? We should do an NFT of this podcast and split this. 4 of us. We'll split the $1 million 4 ways. Because you know what? It's going to be worth 0 in the years to come. I might be wrong. It might be the pot of gold. But when you buy an NFT, you don't own the shot of Jordan dunking. You don't own the copyright. You don't own the right of publicity. What you own is a string of ones and zeros authenticating some other string of ones and zeros. This is the early days of a technology that may down the road be something quite valuable. But right now what you have is a lot of people, who are bored, tied up in their basements, stuck in the pandemic, who made a lot of money in Ethereum and Bitcoin, like by accident, and they're trying to find someplace clever to park it.
I don't know if it's by accident. I mean, a lot of those people did it very intentionally first. And second, things are worth things are worth what we say they're worth, right?
Isn't that amazing? Like, that's like the secret of ownership.
It's very bizarre, yeah.
If you say it's worth something, other people, the key
is to convince
other people to believe you.
Yeah, right.
So the thing about NFTs is there's a lot of primary sales where you see like a lot of the original sale of that clip for 1.2 million. The time you'll know that it's an actual item of ownership that has some sustainable value is when you start to see what's called the secondary market, when you start to see resales. What I'm curious about, and I'm so skeptical about, whether there'll be like real secondary markets, basically people buying used Beeples and used Michael Jordan shots, second time around.
Yeah. And look, this is why we wanted to have you on today. We literally called our publicist specifically and said, get us the NFT wizards to come on this show, because Drinkin' Bros is split up into a bunch of private groups on Facebook. One of them is finance. And a lot of people are trying to figure out what to do with Ethereum and Bitcoin and everything else, and they're going into these NFTs. And we said, look, I don't know enough about it. I'd like to get the experts on to discuss this, because that's what I thought when you said it was, what's to stop someone from taking an image of, Michael Jordan, since you said it, dunking from the free throw line off of what they found online, selling that NFT, but not owning the rights when it would probably be owned by the NBA.
Yeah, nothing is preventing you from doing that. Anyone can create an NFT of anything. So think about like old-fashioned paintings, like ownership that sort of feels more tangible. Like there's one Mona Lisa, it's hanging in the Louvre. Like there it is. Everyone else does not own the Mona Lisa. They own a postcard. They have posters hanging in their rooms, but there's one original. For online art, it's a string of ones and zeros to begin with. So every image of that Michael Jordan doing that dunk is exactly the same. It's the same down to the pixel as every other image. Every image of the Beeple $69 million NFT is identical to every other image. There is no original. What an NFT is trying to do is to say, we're going to make up an original. We're going to have the NFT, this string of ones and zeros, point to the string of ones and zeros that make up the digital art and say that one is the original. But that's an awful lot of faith that blockchain will continue to exist and that it's pointing to something meaningful. Because once you've bought the NFT, you don't get the right to display the art. You don't get the right to basically show Michael Jordan's image. All you really have is the NFT itself, which may or may not continue to exist.
Man,
it's starting to sound a lot like fucking Beanie Babies, to be honest.
Yeah, Beanie Babies are great. Like you have the Beanie Baby. It's like you can throw it at someone. You can put it in a box.
I don't know why the first place you went is throwing it at somebody. Wait, aren't you?
That's the toddler in me.
You're the New York side, so you're the angry guy. The other guy's from Santa Barbara. He's probably a lot more relaxed over there right now.
He's a lot more chill. He actually, you look out his window, you see the beach.
Yeah, James, how do you guys get along, and do you guys agree on this subject of NFTs?
Yeah, I think it's a tulip bubble. At least with tulip bubble, you get the bulb. At the end, you can grow it, you can eat it, you can do what you want. And it basically is like folks just basically saying with our book, we're going to print out 10,000 copies. One of them we're going to say is the chosen one. It's like Neo in the Matrix, right? Except it's not, right? It's basically just saying this book happens to be the one with the NFT. Now, it could be the greater fool theory, right? And so you'll be able to sell that to the next person. But Michael and I are both totally skeptical that there's going to be a real secondary market in these things.
Yeah, that's why you want a range of you want a range of views. It's like we have one set of views. We were when we do these shows, we often follow guests who have the opposite view. I was on Wharton Business Radio just before we were on with you guys, and their previous guest was like, this is the next sliced whatever grilled cheese, sliced bread, whatever some good thing is. That's a physical thing, and they're investing based on it. I think that's it's a reasonable gamble. I wouldn't put my money there just yet.
Sorry to interrupt, guys. I'm one of the producers here. So what you're saying is there's no application for the NFT right now, but as the generations get younger and younger and they're more digitally native, don't they find a need for digital assets and then for those to be verified?
Yeah, but the only thing that's non-fungible is the token, not the digital asset. That's the problem. So we have friends that have released their music albums on NFT now, right? That's fine, but with some pretty non-sophisticated software, I can steal that music still. There's nothing that anybody can do to stop me from doing that, right? So what is it? I guess, Giorgio, what he's saying is the token's legit for sure, but it's pointing to something that has no real intrinsic value because, one, the value that it did have, uniqueness, is now gone.
Well, here's my example. Say a social media derived on the blockchain. Like it's very popular. These things rise and fall overnight, where only NFTs can be displayed. You have a digital avatar, a digital home where your NFT collection can be displayed and be viewed by other people on that social media platform.
Yeah, but how do you get people to come there in the fucking first place? And why?
And you actually don't even have the underlying rights to display the NFT. because that might, Michael Jordan can say, hey, get your NFT, get my image off of your website. You can't commercialize the value of my persona. I own that. And he does. He has something called the right of publicity, which is a separate ownership right, completely apart from the NFT, completely apart from the copyright, which can block your display of it.
Yeah, and this, by the way, this recently just happened with Dogman, the skateboarder with the cranberry juice.
Yeah, that's right.
He was skateboarding to the Fleetwood Mac song, and Fleetwood Mac said, look, you can sell the NFT of this. You've got to take our song out of it. And then the cranberry juice company said, you've got to blur our image out of it, which they did. And he's selling the original, footage of it without the song and with the blurred cranberry image. And he was hoping to get $500,000. I'm not sure what he got for it, but
God bless him if he can get the $500,000. Now for the song, you have, you can have digital rights management. You can have DRM that protects people from downloading the song. That's totally different from the NFT. The NFT is an attempt to create some original ownership online for digital assets that are intrinsically copyable.
Look, look at it from 30,000 feet, right? I mean, what the NFT does, ownership, you need two things for ownership to matter. You need scarcity and you need demand. The NFT creates scarcity. There's only one of whatever it is that's got the NFT. The question is, why is there demand? And that's going to be the real question going forward. Right now there is, right? Gronkowski's, selling for 1.2.
Yeah.
Is that going to continue?
Well, let me ask you this, because yesterday, Jay-Z entered the NFT world in $19 million he gave in funding for rounds for the platform Bitski, which is going into NFTs. That's a lot of money to dump into something that isn't necessarily real. So what do you tell somebody like a Jay-Z for investing $19 million into a company like that?
Well, there's a lot of ways to turn a big fortune into a small fortune. And this may be one of them. This is the bigger fool question is there going to be someone following behind? The first people who get into anything like this, they're going to, the first people who got into GameStop stock, they made a lot of money, right? They as it sort of skyrocketed based on the Reddit sort of hyping. But the ones who come in later, sort of the average you and me kind of guys who try to make money on this, we're going to get burned. So I don't think this is a terrible thing for the Jay-Z's who have really savvy advisors who can get in early, who can be sort of the ones who get the sort of the leading edge of the wave. The rest of us are going to get sort of trapped in the foam, behind the wave. I think we'll see.
Yeah, but if you can get out ahead of it, what would you recommend people to do? Because, we've been approached by it. I own a bunch of my old movies. Some people have said, hey, sell your old movies on here. And then it's, an NFT and it's one of one. What would you recommend for people to do right now? Just kind of sell everything?
Well, listen, if you have something to sell and you can cash out and you don't care about the future so much, great. But is it a viable sort of long-term market for artists, for songwriters, for athletes? This may be the killer app from blockchain. I don't think it is. I don't think it is because you get so much less ownership than the NFT buzz has you believe. You don't own any of the underlying rights. What you own is an authentication mechanism, a specific string of ones and zeros attached to a specific platform that may or may not continue to exist, tomorrow.
Now I have one more question. Sorry, Ross.
No, it's fine.
Beeple releasing his artwork, he releases one of one on some pieces, and some pieces he releases up to 100 at a different valuation. Now, him being the digital artist of that, it's the same as having a copy of the Mona Lisa or a print of the Mona Lisa at your house that's worth nothing. It's nowhere near as worth the original Mona Lisa, sticking with that same analogy.
You're saying if you get it directly from the creator of the art.
Right. And I feel like you should only be able to do that. Like if someone else is releasing NFTs on art or images that they don't own, how is no one suing for that at this point?
If you're wondering whether or not we've set up some kind of apparatus to police the fucking blockchain world, that doesn't exist. All right. And it's not going to for a very long time. There's too many fucking interests in there and nobody knows it's chaos. Nobody knows what's going on. So yeah, there's no way to stop that from happening. Somebody gets a digital picture at the display of the original or something and turns it into that, then you're done.
But the original ownership of that still is tagged. It's still known that it came from people. You still know that it came from the artist. So can't we authenticate in some way that way as well?
I don't know.
Listen, I can create a new Beeple. I can create an NFT on the same Beeple and sell that. Anybody can.
Yeah.
There's no limit to the number of NFTs that can be created.
Right, but it's not coming from the original artist, so why would that have value? These have value because he spent the last 10 years releasing daily art for free, and then now people want to own some of the artwork that he's releasing for purchase.
They don't own the artwork. They just own the statement. They own the statement that he says, "I'm giving you a string of ones and zeros attaching to that artwork." You don't own the artwork.
He creates
the artwork. Anybody can go download the artwork.
Right, in the same way that anyone can buy a print of the Mona Lisa.
Yeah, but the original Mona Lisa is a very different thing. The original Mona Lisa has a texture and a quality and a feel and specificity that doesn't exist for online art.
I paint an exact replica of the Mona Lisa with exact texture, for purpose of the example.
Yeah, I mean, we use that with our law students as, the kind of hypotheticals. You have the perfect exact, but for tangible physical stuff, you don't. There is still one thing that was the original, and you just don't have that for part of what's so appealing historically about the digital art community is that it was one of our most sort of democratic, open forms of art that we had created in the last century. What NFTs are trying to do is basically create a mechanism for speculation around art that sort of does to online art what that kind of speculative frenzy has done for the existing art.
Well, I mean, world. I agree with everything you're saying, but I'm going to counter with something that's a relatively recent example of this working, and then that is the certificate of authenticity with sports memorabilia, especially. Meaningless piece of paper that only refers to the actual object, and it became increasingly valuable during the baseball card wars and the signature wars back in the fucking late 80s and early 90s. It was the ability to authenticate that in any way, but all it did was give more value to something that already existed, right? So I think everybody's getting a little too smart for their own good. They're trying to figure out new ways to do this or do that. The same old stuff is probably what's going to be simply amplified by this new tech. It's not going to be some new thing, I don't think. And to be honest, I don't know what it is. I don't see any value in NFT, frankly, at least as far as, unless it's something like Giorgio's saying right now, which is that when I say value, I mean intrinsic value. If it's something that a super fan wanted from somebody and they knew that only that, so if you take a picture specifically for that, right, maybe that matters to people. I don't know.
Well, what if you get some sort of certificate with your NFT? Does that now give it value because it does tangible? There's only 10 of those certificates printed for the 10 NFTs?
No, it's not. It's because, what he's saying is because a replication of this book right here, right, like the physical book, would be one thing. But I can literally right-click and download this picture I'm looking at right now, and it's the exact same thing. Like it's a clone. So where's the value in that? Like if somebody can steal it that easily, where's the value? And this is why this is why Napster went away. Like there was no way to assign value to these transfers. So I don't know what the solution to that is, or what, if anything, NFT tech will be able to transfer or secure. Maybe it's messages we're securing. Maybe we're encrypting information that changes hands for some purpose other than retail economy. You know what I mean? Who knows?
Look, NFTs might be the real deal. Like, people thought that about ICOs, but about initial coin offerings a few years ago. It didn't turn out to be. NFTs, they may be. And they may be for exactly the reason you just said, which is this notion of, it's like the piece of paper that authenticates the trading card. But there's sort of, it's so removed from the piece of paper and the card. Like it's a string of ones and zeros about the art itself, which is perfectly replicable. And then it's a string of ones and zeros about the blockchain, which itself is a technology that it seems to me is a technology in search of its killer app.
Yeah.
And its killer app may well be smart contracts down the road.
Maybe.
That we can authenticate. But I don't know if the NFT version has reached us to the promised land of the sort of killer app.
Well, I think it would. I think the NFT itself, if anything happens, I think it would be the killer app. It's you would have to view it only on that platform. It would be something that maybe you can take a screen, or you can take a picture with your fucking camera phone or some shit, but it is on some kind of secure platform that you cannot remove that media from anyway. Record it. I mean, there's a number of apps that do that now. There's ways around some of them, but Spotify, for example, if you try to screen record with their Spotify podcast up and it's playing video, it will not allow you to screen record. There's all kinds of tech involved in that stuff. So if you could do something like that, but it would have to be only that piece of digital material would only be viewable on that app. You would have to have that app and that token. You'd have to have both things handshaking to be able to view or witness it or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, I mean, that may well be coming, but that's not what we have today.
Yeah, it's not what you have today. And then James, in your new book, Mine, here, you talk about the explosion of the baseball cards in the 1950s. And this is kind of what it feels like now. However, I would rather own an original Honus Wagner or something like that in my hands. That is one of 100 versus some digital artwork that I would have a hard time proving in the future.
Well, here's actually part of our answers on NFTs actually goes back to the baseball cards in the 50s. So when baseball cards in the 50s had the same problem that NFTs have today, which is that there was no scarcity. That when Bowman Card Company printed baseball cards in the 50s, Topps said, "Hey, listen, we can do the same thing. We can just print baseball cards of the same characters." And Bowman said, "Hold on a second. We have exclusive contracts with all these baseball players." And Topps said, "We don't care. We can just make our own cards. Like you have, there's no right to the image of these baseball players. We can profit from the baseball cards just like you can." And they went to war. Topps and Bowman went to war, and actually Bowman won. And the courts in New York created a new form of ownership called the right of publicity, the right to be able to commercialize the value of your image, which is what Marilyn Monroe and Lou Gehrig eventually could potentially make their money on. But Topps actually then bought Bowman. Bowman won the law. Topps actually won the war because they bought out Bowman, and then they had a monopoly on baseball cards for the next 40 years until the late 70s. But that monopoly was based on a much more powerful property right than is what underlies NFTs. It was based on law. NFTs are outside of the law. They're not based on law at all. They're based on technology. Technology is very powerful, but it's not law. And I wouldn't count on it operating the same way that copyright, a traditional property right, or the right of publicity, a new property right that emerged in the context of baseball cards in the 50s, but a property right that became part of law, gives you a lot more secure status for pushing back against copiers of various sorts.
You know who's going to get rich off this is the lawyers.
Because the lawyers always get rich off of it.
Like, what's the news with that?
Yeah, they're going to be battling this out for years. I remember when one of the Kardashians went through this on Instagram, where they used an image from Getty that was taken of them. Paparazzi took a picture of them at an event. They put it up on their own Instagram, and it had the Getty imprint on it. And then I believe it was Getty tried to sue them for saying, "Hey, your picture got 100,000 likes, and we took the picture." And she was like, "Well, look, that's me. I didn't give you permission to take the picture. Why can't I use a picture of myself? If you're going to sell a picture of myself, I didn't give you permission for you to take my picture and sell it." I feel like we're kind of in the same ballpark here. And again, there is no law to establish it. There will be soon, probably. But it seems to me like in the end, the lawyers will get rich. And then whoever is able to monetize this as quickly as possible will make a little bit of money in the short term, but in the long run, it won't be worth that much. That's what it feels like to me. Is that accurate to you?
It's not a question of accurate. It's like a question of this is like gambling, it's a fad, and it may well be that it's a fad that becomes a baseball card industry that actually has some staying power, or it may be a fad like the Beanie Boo industry. That where the money fades. I'm skeptical, but every podcast that we're on around this, we're one end of the views, and there's other people who are hyping it and saying, "Hey, this is the next next big thing."
Well, the beauty of us is, we wanted to have you on just out of curiosity because we don't actually know either way. I know, all of our producers that work for us are heavily into this, but they were also heavily into crypto before Dan and I were on this show. And now we look like the dummies because crypto has exploded and everybody's buying houses and Lambos and all the other shit. And we got into it late. And NFTs.
And NFTs. That's where they're spending the crypto. It's like buying the game, the top shot. Listen, it's also possible that we're dinosaurs. Like your producer asked a little bit earlier, like, hey, young digital natives, like this is what they want to own. They want to own first it was skateboarding a generation ago, and it's not skateboarding today. Today it's like online assets, avatars, and currency. And that may well be right. Like it may well be that there's a whole new world of ownership, and that world is, we who are, the experts are going to be disrupted by the kids.
For sure,
the kids are going to say, screw you. Experts are wrong.
That's the demand side for sure. That's the marketing equation all filled out, but it doesn't. The supply side is still weird. There's still no way to authenticate that that's the only one of that exists, or that would matter in any
People
way.
can do another. People can sell us, a second NFT of the $69 million image. He can sell 100 of them. There's no like mechanism. There's no legal mechanism that constrains the ability to create NFTs.
Well, which then becomes the additions of baseball cards, because you can always go back to the blockchain and see which one was first, which one was original. So if he does release more, all that does to me is make that initial
for sure. But some people have to value the fact that that's the only or original one.
Right, and we already value digital art, and I want to point towards: did anyone see the digital skin boom coming for your video game characters? How much money people were going to dump into digitally clothing their characters? Sometimes even in first-person games where you don't even get to see it yourself. It's only for the other people in the game to see it for you. And
it's a big market in Fortnite and a bunch of other games, but especially that one.
World of Warcraft really put it on the map.
The whole skins market is huge, and basically there's a lot of value being created in an online environment. But those online environments are always those markets are created within a sort of protected ecosystem, which is the Epic Games, or whoever basically creates and controls, or World of Warcraft, whoever controls that game, creates the in-game economy, and it usually takes a cut of it, and also usually has some control over the shape and direction of that online in-game digital assets, which is not really possible in the NFT world.
Well, I mean, maybe the NFT sits on top of that platform then and acts like that, but that's not nearly as valuable as it would be if it was an independent platform, right?
That's right.
That it was I guess a self-licking ice cream cone at that point. But yeah, with here's what I think is that a lot of people who are moving shady money around are having a real easy time doing it right now. That's the first place my head goes. Anybody that's trying to launder money right now, it takes like 20 minutes. You don't even have to know a guy.
You can just be the guy.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
You can literally
used to need to use the Cayman Islands to go launder money. And then the Isle of Man and Guernsey Islands, there was like a hierarchy for money launderers. And then then South Dakota actually got in on the game. It turns out if you want to launder money today, like the absolutely hottest money laundering haven in the world today is in the US. South Dakota is actually crushing Switzerland and the Cayman Islands. They've created more secrecy and more responsibility evasion, more tax evasion in South Dakota than you can get from your Swiss account anymore.
Yeah, where at and why?
How do you get there? It's not.
But why South Dakota specifically?
Because in America, ownership isn't federal law; it's state law. It's not in the Constitution. So who owns what in America is based on state law, and so the most deviant state like South Dakota, can say "screw you" to the rest of America, and they've done that. What they basically said is, park your money in South Dakota. You don't have to even come visit here. You don't have to sign papers here. You can do it remotely. But if your money passes through South Dakota trusts, you can structure it so that you don't basically, if you hit someone with your car, you don't have to pay them. If you owe money for child support, you don't have to pay it. It's outrageous, but it's become the place where hot money in the world goes to. And they've also cut out a lot of the middlemen on money laundering, basically just bring it straight to South Dakota. It's become the largest money haven, one of the largest money havens in the world just in the last few decades.
I mean, this is not unique.
Dan, yeah, schedule a call with our lawyer for South Dakota, please. That would be great. Schedule a lawyer. You guys
don't qualify. Like for the South Dakota Trust to work, you would already know about them if you're rich enough. These aren't for the 1%. This is for the 1% of the 1%. You have to be at the 50 or $100 million net worth. Maybe you are. Maybe
are you outing us? Are you saying we're not that?
You might well be. You might. You're sitting on so much Ethereum and your NFTs that basically you could cash it out into like actual card hold cash. So then if you do that, when you're basically cashing out your 50 million, the place to do is to stash it in South Dakota. It is outrageous. There's actually most people don't even realize it's not like a metaphorically different legal system. If you're super rich in this country, like the 1% of the 1%, there is an actually different legal system in states like South Dakota that let you hide your money from all sorts of taxes and responsibility.
James, why does nobody else know about this? Yeah, James, why does nobody else know about this?
Well, as Michael said, because you're not rich enough. You don't have the advisors who are telling you. I'm sorry, maybe you are. But we're not.
I'm not.
Well, the real reason.
Ask yourself, have you ever wondered why, when you were paying a credit card, you used to do it by mail, you would always send it to Delaware or to South Dakota? This is not a new thing. States compete with one another to attract business. So South Dakota, about Michael, 20, 30 years ago, they basically lifted the limits on interest rates. The credit card companies could charge. No surprise. Credit card companies set up offices in South Dakota. And this is the same kind of thing, but now they're catering basically to the trust and estates lawyers and the super wealthy. I mean, they crush the Cayman Islands. Think about that for a minute.
Yeah, you're right. Now looking back at it, most of my credit card statements and all that stuff went to South Dakota or Delaware. I know, our LLC for our company is set up in Delaware, and that was a fancy lawyer who did that for us and was like, "Hey, you got to go to Delaware." I didn't know why, but I went along with it. I wanted to ask you guys about this. With all the success of NFTs and everything else, the biggest surprise to me is the actual sales of arts and baseball cards, hard copies that are still going around. Like even Basquiat this morning, that was a $93.1 million sale. Is one feeding into the other, or is one driving the other because they would rather have a physical copy of something?
Listen, when you hear kids on the playground fighting over something, they're shouting "mine, mine." They're usually fighting over
your book,
a toy, or our book, or your a download of your or a CD of your podcast. They're fighting over a piece of food. They're fighting over some physical, tangible thing. Like when psychologists do studies of kids on playground, they're never fighting over a joke or a song. Like kids' brains are wired. Our human brains are wired around hard physical stuff. Different areas of the brain light up when you hold a mug from when you say, "This is my song." Like intangible stuff doesn't feel like ownership. It's part of why property law is really different. Like who owns what, of tangible stuff, of physical stuff, is really different from intellectual property law, copyright law, patent law, the stuff that we're talking, NFTs that we're talking about today. Our brains, our primitive animal brains, are like wired for hard physical stuff. It's partly that, which is why I'm so skeptical of NFTs, because they're like, removed from reality squared. Like digital stuff has a reality, and the NFT is like a reality, is like a layer on top of that own intangible stuff. And you layer that on top, you're so far from the primitive human ability. Like if you can't explain it to a 5-year-old how ownership works, you got to be a little bit worried. Like I teach a bunch of law students how to be lawyers. And at the end of my semester, what I tell them is, if you can't explain it to a 5-year-old, you haven't done your job. Like 5-year-olds are like super sophisticated about ownership. Like they know this is my toy truck and I can go zoom, zoom, zoom. And if I throw it at my sister, it'll get taken away from me. Like they know like how ownership basically works. If your parent says you got to give it to your sister for a few minutes, it's still mine. But if I give it to my sister for the rest of the morning, it's not mine anymore. They have a pretty subtle understanding of ownership. And NFTs are so far from that. When it gets to the point where you can explain an NFT to a kid, that's when I'll believe this is a real market.
Are you teaching copyright law currently to your students?
I'm grading the exams. Like this is like a great relief from the hardest part of being a professor. The only really bad part of like the greatest job in the world is grading exams.
Where are you professor at, by the way?
I teach at Columbia Law School in New York City.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, it's one of those little podunk place.
Don't lie, your TA grades all those exams.
Yeah, exactly. I want to shift gears here into crypto because, look, a lot of these NFTs are purchased through Ethereum and things like that, and Bitcoin. You don't obviously have a high opinion or a high long game for NFTs. What about Ethereum and Bitcoin?
Jim?
No, I mean, I think this is kind of what philosophers call the existence proof, which is it's there, right? I mean, this is what we were talking about earlier. You know, for ownership to be meaningful, you need scarcity, you need demand, right? Those huge sort of data farms that are just pumping out the algorithms to create these cryptocurrencies. You've got the scarcity there, right? The question is, are people going to want it? And Michael and I guess you all also were saying that's ridiculous, right? No one's going to want a string of ones and zeros. So far, we're wrong. And this is basically turning into a track record where you can, you go to the bank to a certain extent, as people are. I mean, one of the things that I find so interesting about this moment in time is that we are moving really from this notion where evolutionarily and historically we own something, we own something, to really we have access to ones and zeros. That's all that cryptocurrency is. As Michael said, we're not wired to do that. I think it's one of the reasons cryptocurrency is so hard for folks like us to get our arms around. Cryptocurrencies are real scarcity, and if folks basically say, that's something that I want, and there are more folks that want it that can get it, then it's going to continue. And so I think I would say I've been proven wrong on crypto. I thought it was just going to be a flash in the pan.
So are you guys in it now?
But that said, there are a lot of cryptos that haven't made it.
Correct, right? But are you guys in any of it now? As investors,
I invest in real estate. I invest in stuff that I can understand. And that's actually that's what all the guru guides tell you to do. Invest in stuff you understand. And it may just be that I'm a dinosaur and I'm investing in dinosaur stuff like real estate. But that's where I feel comfortable. I understand how cash flows work. I understand what it takes to make a profit. I understand. I can evaluate the people and the technologies that they're using. It's are they renting it out or not? And that makes sense to me. Crypto, God bless. I just need to get to my own retirement. It may well be that my students all retire on their crypto earnings. I'd be a little surprised if that's true. I mean, the great wealth builder in America for the last 150, 200, almost all of American history of how do you actually build long-term wealth in America? It's almost all through real estate. Real estate is how most Americans have most of their wealth. The 30-year mortgage means you put a little bit of cash down, and the bank slowly buys the house for you over the time of the mortgage. Most people's retirement savings are the equity, the wealth that they've stashed in their homes. There's a lot of 401ks, retirement plans, pensions, and so on. But the bulk of wealth in America still today is in individually owned real estate.
Well, now I'll flip it on you. A lot of people are buying real estate in crypto. Case in point, a friend of Dan and I bought an entire office building in Bitcoin and was able to convert his cryptocurrency into actual physical real estate. MasterCard is now accepting it. PayPal is now accepting it. Dan, you've said this forever on the show that money is just a made-up thing, and it's kind of wherever or whoever you can trick into believing that it's worth something, that it is actually worth something. Is it? And who's to say that it's wrong?
Listen. When MasterCard says we'll accept Bitcoin, that circles us back to the very start of our conversation today about when are NFTs real? When do I begin to believe in them a little as having some staying power? But when MasterCard is buying Bitcoin, what they're doing is they're saying that we believe that there's a secondary market in Bitcoin. They hold the Bitcoin for an instant and then they flip it on to somebody else and get back cash. So they believe that there's a deep enough secondary market where Bitcoins can be traded, that they will have a stable value over time, where they can begin to sort of evaluate Bitcoin vis-a-vis other kinds of investments. What's unusual about NFTs, as opposed to cryptocurrency, fungible tokens, Bitcoins, is that there has emerged a secondary market, a trading market that has some depth and robustness in some cryptocurrencies, which gives me some more confidence in them.
But that was what I said when I start to see that in NFTs, when I see the used Beeples being sold and resold, and there begin to be a robust secondary market, that's when you begin to say, hey, this thing has some staying power.
Okay, so
So go ahead.
I'm sorry. So NFTs, like they're made to be resold. They're made to be traded. They want to be retraded because then the original owner of the NFT and the original buyer gets a piece of that, from my understanding. And that's why some people I've talked to have looked into it for concert tickets and other tickets, because they want to incentivize the trading amongst the NFT between people. But back to crypto real quick. Right now, we're basically paying for math. We're paying for validation of a transaction, and we're paying for validation of funds. And Bitcoin right now, it gets a lot of heat because its technology is bad. It costs more energy to validate that transaction with a computer to solve that math, and that energy costs money to produce from whatever power company you're buying from, and that's why mining Bitcoin isn't always fundable in certain places, and that's why you need to do it in places with low temperature. You don't have to pay to decrease or remove the heat from the room, and that's why the newer cryptocurrencies with better math or better, for lack of a better term, better math, are rising up, and why people are building upon the Ethereum blockchain because its technology is better and is more efficient. So that kind of makes sense to me in the sense like we have to pay to make sure something is validated, and it costs energy or computer energy basically per se to do that. And that makes more sense to me than like the market, like in a way.
Yeah, the stock market.
I mean, it's all voodoo, right? It's and money is voodoo. So the advantage of money is that it's backed, it's backed by a government that you believe has some staying power, and the value of currencies trading against each other depends on sort of the faith in that government's policies tomorrow.
But that's a relatively new thing with currency, though, right? The faith in the government. It used to be faith in some shiny rock we dug out of the ground.
Yeah. So it's been an evolution from the most physical, tangible media for value, which was cowrie shells in some cultures and shiny metals that we dig up in others. But there was something against which we measure value.
It's still shiny metals. Those shiny earth minerals are used to build the GPUs and CPUs to process this information. It's still shiny metals that we need to dig out of the ground.
Yeah,
that's true. But it's decoupled from the sort of guarantee, which you may not believe in, but the governments provide a guarantee behind money that was this transition from fiat currency, from currency based on gold, to sort of currency just backed by the promise of the Federal Reserve.
Right.
And with cryptocurrencies, it's backed by nothing. It's sufficiently outside of the law that it answers the money laundering hope of sort of a lot of dark money around the world. That's the place to be the perfect place to hide that money. But it also has the vulnerability of being outside of the law.
Man, it's so tough to say what is correct and what isn't. I love the debate between different generations. In particular, Giorgio, I know how passionate he is about crypto and NFTs and all this stuff. But, I look at a guy like the managing director at Goldman Sachs yesterday from the London office who quit his job after 15 years because he made so much money in Dogecoin. So you definitely can make a ton of money and get out of it. I guess, to compare it to your gambling statement earlier, it just depends on when you get your chips off the table before everybody figures it out. And it's such a strange world.
Chips are the right thing to say, right? What are those chips worth? A lot of plastic, right?
Yeah.
Is the window going to be there when you go to cash them in?
Yeah, it seems like NFT is basically speculation at this point. It's a speculative market, and the speculation is, or the supposition rather is, this is going to be valuable at some point in the future, right? And that's where we get into the secondary market.
Yeah,
some new technology is going to have to come out
to go get gold. They knew that if they actually got the gold out of the ground, they were speculators, but they gold actually had some worth.
Right.
That's not so clear for the NFTs, that there is actually some hard, valuable thing there.
Well, maybe people
that's going to have worth tomorrow.
Maybe people are conflating the value that cryptocurrency now clearly has, right? Because Visa is accepting it. I mean, Tesla, a number of large companies, PayPal is processing it. Maybe they're conflating the two, right? NFT, to be clear, is not a currency. It's not something that has any kind of value in that way.
No, and that's by design. That's the N in FT. It's the non-fungible piece of it. That's the core that for this new application. It's an application that is still in search of an underlying sort of notion of ownership that connects to something that, here's the thing. Giorgio may make NFTs real. because of his belief. It's his faith. He is a zealot. He is a convert. And if there's enough Giorgios out there, then they create their own reality by trading it amongst themselves. And that may be all it takes.
You know what's weird is in real life, there's enough Giorgios out there that create their own reality that I don't even know if coins matter in his world. And I'm amped about that. What made you want to write this book in the first place? This mind book? Why?
Yeah, so Michael and I had both written popular books earlier. I wrote one about drinking water. He wrote one about certain aspects of ownership, why it's hard to get people together to do things. And we were looking for a new topic, and a friend of mine said, it's funny, no one's ever written Freakonomics for how we own things. I mean, if you look at Freakonomics, I know, I'm sure that you know about it.
Yeah.
Basically, if you look at it as a writer, essentially, it is taking very clever stories to teach pretty simple microeconomics. And if you understand basic incentives, you know why sumo wrestlers cheat and why drug dealers live with their mother, right? It makes you feel smarter after reading it. We do the same thing with ownership, right? It turns out that how ownership works, they're just 6 simple stories that explain everything. And we try to use clever, engaging stories to sort of bring you in. And, after you've read Freakonomics, you look for individual incentives. After you've read our book, you look at the different ways we own things. And once you start looking at how we own things, then the world just snaps into focus. And you start asking the kinds of questions that we've been talking about on the show so far.
Yeah, I think if you're a musician out there and or somebody that creates stuff that gets licensed in any kind of way, you really should take a look at this book. If you're a person that owns property, you should probably take a look. There's a number of people. Maybe just if you're alive, take a look.
Yeah, if you don't own property, you should understand why you don't. Like, that's a choice that someone else has made for them to own it and you not to.
Right.
And it comes back to our simple stories.
Yeah, it does. And we have a lot of listeners out there right now who are looking to invest their money in different places. I think a book like this helps because right now it's confusing. The world is muddied. I mean, you look what happened with the Robinhood thing for GameStop and for obviously AMC, where they were able to just shut down the market. Dan and I had gone on air and just said, look, it's how do you trust the stock market after that? If you're able just to turn off the game over and over and over again, if something is driving through the roof. I tend to agree with you, where I think real estate will always be real estate, and in particular near an ocean or something like that.
But not too near, because oceans are rising. You want to be a little bit back. Get too close, you're gonna get flooded.
Yeah, it's true. It happened to me once, and I lost a house in that. So you might be right on that, but I'm with you. Look, real estate and land in particular.
Not making more of it. Yeah.
No, they're not making any more of it. I know Oprah's famous saying is, God's not making any more beaches. And then there's a reason why Bill Gates is buying up. What is he? Isn't he the largest landowner in the United States now? It used to be Ted Turner.
Landowner in America, where Ted Turner had these huge ranches now it's and bigger even than these big Texas ranches. Out in Montana and Wyoming, enormous amounts of land.
Not to be
a lot of really, but if you want to know some of the secrets of the super rich, it's not just that they stash their money in South Dakota, but they buy farmland in Saskatchewan. They're buying farmland in these remote Canadian provinces. Their long-term play is these will all be temperate farming communities down the road, and they want to get in ahead of while they're still not farmable.
A lot of celebrities were doing that in Los Angeles, getting together, buying up a lot of farmland in the Midwest for marijuana harvesting, actually.
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons that lands. Listen, I'm not a big shill for land or real estate. That's just, for me, what seems most important as for your listeners who are thinking about where to park all these, Bitcoin profits, is invest in what you understand. If you think you understand Bitcoin, God bless you. That should be where you're going. I don't, so I don't invest there. But if you're in tech savvy, there's a lot of fortunes to be made today in the tech world. But invest in what you have some confidence you understand.
Yeah, I've been investing a lot in weed and pills, actually.
That's the future. I remember. I don't know if you watched that TV show
taking weed
with Genji Cohen from a couple of years ago.
Oh yeah,
that was a great show. And when that show ended, it ended. This last season was 5 or 6 years ago. The end of the show, these guys were on the run from the law for the whole show. Mary Louise Parker. The last episode, this fantasy episode of the future, was pot cafes with different, pot on, on display like a Starbucks.
Yep.
And it seemed like insanely fanciful to think that could be the world. And that is the world today. That is the future. It's becoming a huge and growing business. So listen, if you have some hot tips on where to invest, let me know.
What about you? What about you, James? Where's your money at?
My money is sending kids to school.
You don't get to invest it at all, or all your kids are in college?
Yeah, grad school. Yeah.
Yeah, that'll really eat it up. What if you tell me what grad school it is? I'll know that you'll be broke for the rest of your life. Then is it Columbia?
Wharton.
Oh, even worse. Good luck. Yeah, you're going to be poor forever after that. I hope this book does really, really well. Well, how did you make your money growing up, James?
I worked for Ali's General Store. Basically, I remember going the first day. I was like 15 or 16, and I said, "How much are you going to pay me?" Because I thought that and he'd say, "What's minimum wage?" And so
that was it.
That was it. Great job.
No kidding. What about you, Mike?
My first jobs after college, and my jobs in college, I waited tables all through college. I loved waiting tables. My favorite job was waiting tables. You're standing up, you're interacting with people. It's like, right away if you did a good job, you either get 20% tip or you don't. I love the immediate feedback of that. After college, I was a typist for a couple of years. I was a temp typist, my first job after college.
That was a
terrible job.
That's a horrible job.
But it paid pretty well. I don't know.
Well, when you were coming up, like growing up on the come up, and you were looking at investing and all that other stuff, who did you look up to understand kind of the financial system and the market in order for you to do the things you are? And the other thing we always get is from our audience is, did you have a year in mind of like, all right, I want to retire at 65, and here's my plan, and I'm going to set this forth?
So I've always tried to have a job where I don't want to retire. I love what I do, and I won't say they're going to take me out in a box. But I'd say if I weren't doing this, I kind of like to share ideas with smart, sort of edgy folks like you, and be able to sort of to talk about that. In terms of sort of where I got financial guidance, it's always been sort of folks who are older, who seem to know what the heck they're talking about. And just talk to a lot of different people. And as Michael said, try to understand what they're doing, because this stuff is not, no one is born understanding the stock market.
I actually teach, I have a class that I teach my students. I'm supposed to be teaching them property law, but I take one class and I say, the class today is the class is called How to Be a Grown-Up. And it's like just the basic things you need to know, like what kind of insurance do you need to have as a grown-up? I asked them, like, how many of you guys have umbrella insurance? And like 3 hands go up out of 100. Everyone should. But it's just like basic stuff like that, where like the stuff that someone should teach you that no one does, but how to like be a grown-up in our society. I try to give some of that to my students. I learned that sort of slowly, painfully. I made a lot of mistakes, investing early on. I learned from my dad, who was a pretty careful, patient investor. And I, like Jim and like most faculty, found a job. And this was it took me a long time to find teaching as a profession, being a law professor in particular, where I'm surrounded by smart people. It's basically a part-time job. The actual job part of it is a couple hours a week. And you spend the rest of your time thinking about, talking about stuff, writing about stuff that you care about. So it's a job from which I wouldn't want to retire. Actually, and this has been conversation that you have in the faculty lounge. Like, if you won $100 million in the lottery, like, how would you change your life? Like, I wouldn't change my life if I won $100 million. I wouldn't quit my job. I wouldn't not teach. I love teaching. I would teach a little bit less, but I would still teach. The one thing I was like, what would I do differently is I would have fresh flowers on my desk every day. I would if money were no object, I'd always have someone bringing me fresh flowers so my desk looked nice.
I would be teaching in some kind of super
I would
suit.
fly first class. So I don't have to worry about people reclining their seat into my knees.
Yeah, I would spend all the money buying an Iron Man suit, like a real one that functioned, and I would show up to everywhere I went in that thing for the rest of my life.
I would love that. See, I need to go for you for my fantasy life.
Yeah.
My fantasy life, I'm not thinking big enough.
No, you're not.
All right, toss the flowers out. I'm going with the Iron Man.
Well, add weed and pills, and you'll start coming up with these ideas on a more regular basis.
World's
Listen,
best
this is good. This is where Drinking Brothers can really make a contribution.
Yeah.
Is like,
oh yeah.
What should our lives look like when we got the $100 million?
I can paint it for you. How old were you when you got married?
I was 44. I was old.
Okay, so you're 44. How long you guys been married now?
15 years.
Okay, 15 years. So if you're super rich and want $100 million, obviously you're going to want to scale down, probably hit that 24-year-old. Go back in time.
Right, the trophy wife. I hear you.
Yes.
I love my wife. I don't want to trade her. I'm pretty. So let's take that under advisement.
I understand that, but you start there, okay?
Right there, all right.
And then start with all of the drugs you never really did and the parties you never really got to go to. Because, with enough money like that, you can actually buy your way into anything. And that is a total serious statement. There was a bet with a friend of mine who had made a ton of money off this movie in Hollywood, and he goes, I bet you $5,000 that I can take a picture with Barack Obama within a month. And it was when he was running, and I was like, there's no fucking way. Yes, he bought his way into a fundraiser, and I took the photo. He shook Barack Obama's hand, and he gives me this like shit-eating grin of like, I'm telling you, when you're rich, you can do anything you want, and it's totally true. And when you see all these pictures with like Epstein partying with Bill Gates and all this other shit, you're like, oh yeah, fuck. Only the rich hang out with the rich, and you can do all this other wild shit. But yeah. Marry young, do a lot of drugs. There was a great story of a kid who went to go try to kill himself in Mexico. Emptied out his bank accounts, bought all the drugs and prostitutes he possibly could in Mexico. And then at the end of it, when he ran out of money, he realized, oh shit, life is pretty fucking awesome. If I can just make enough money to do this all the time, I definitely don't want to kill myself. And I learned a lot from that. So I think the both of you guys, like if you didn't have to pay for grad school and you were flying first class and you were getting a private jet, James, I think you'd be a lot goddamn happier. And then, then you could really start over and be the person you wanted to be, maybe.
I'm going to push back. I feel pretty. I don't have I have the wrong fantasies. My fantasies are flowers and not the jetpack with a 24-year-old. But one of the challenges of being a grown-up, I think, is finding the path that works for you. And I feel like it took a long time to get here, but being a law professor is like better than working for a living. It's better than being rich. It's like you're surrounded by smart people. You get to have conversations like this. It's like super fun. This for me, this is where it's at.
I'm with Michael, except for the better than being rich part. Better to be a law professor and be rich.
Yeah, because look, I always say the same thing. I'm like, when people say money can't buy you happiness, I'm like, no, they're liars. It can. The only thing is you have to have a good set of friends in place already, and great family around you already. Because when you get there, with this show, we've interviewed everybody you possibly could. Oscar winners to porn stars, athletes, you name it. And they all say the same thing, that their family comes and hits them up for money and everything else. The ones who are the most adjusted are the ones who came from great families, had great relationships with their wives or their spouses and things like that. And then they had great friends in place before it happened. The ones that are absolute nightmare scenarios, I'm not going to say who they were because I've worked with a lot of them, were the ones that didn't have any of that in place. And then they got all the money and then they got all the fame. And then they were like, oh shit. What now? Like, people still don't like me.
I live in a world. My wife is a television writer. We live in a world with a lot of people who are in the television industry who are, the stars who aren't very happy are the ones who, didn't have the kind of grounding from before they got famous. They got famous too fast. They got famous when they were too young. And there was too much money and too much fame, and they spin out of control. And it's terrible. Actually, when you talk to psychologists about who actually study happiness, there's like a whole field of happiness studies. The happiness actually goes up if you are poor. Life sucks, and happiness goes up pretty steadily as wealth increases. But above about a surprisingly low number, happiness does not go up as you get wealthier, and that number turns out to be about $75,000 a year for an individual. So anything above that, there's very little correlation between wealth above $75,000 a year and self-reported measures of happiness and all of its correlates like depression, anxiety, drug use, whatever the inverse is of happiness, or not drug use, but drug use that sort of interferes with your life. It's actually people get to a level of happiness at a lower amount of money than you might guess, according to psychologists who study this.
No, it makes sense. It makes sense. Not everybody's got dreams of Lambos and.
I have these pathetic, nice flowers in the desk dream. Like, don't pay me anything.
Yeah, I mean, shoot for the stars. That's a terrible one.
I hear you. That's
a terrible one. If you win the lottery, you just want fresh flowers.
I know. I gotta really rethink my priorities.
Yeah, you want some of that Peruvian marching powder there. Yeah, pure. None of that stepped on shit like Britney. Just some pure shit.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Since you guys wrote this book and you seem to be ahead of the time a little bit, what is the next thing around the corner that we should be looking for investment-wise, or what's the next NFT or crypto? What is that next thing that is around the bend that maybe we just don't know about quite yet?
I got to say, in all honesty, asking two law professors that question shows a basic misunderstanding of where our expertise is.
There was a time when I made a series of bad choices on stock picking, and my friends started to say to me, "Listen, we need to know what you're investing." Like, they wanted to know, like, what are you investing in, Howard? What are you investing in? Like, why do you want to know? It's like, whatever you're investing in, we're going to short. Like, you're consistently bad. So whatever we tell you, you should short that future.
That's hilarious. So
I will say, I think we talked about this earlier. I think betting on climate change is a good bet.
Okay, as far as
it's going to happen. So buying the farmland in Canada is a good idea, is what he's saying.
Canada, French champagne producers are buying land in England.
Yeah,
because that's where the champagne production is going to be. Yeah. Investing heavily in shoreline real estate for the long term, it's not a good place to be. I mean, we're seeing climate change happening in real time. So that actually, that's something I'd take into consideration.
That's interesting. Dan, you were talking about that New Orleans would be underwater here. Pretty soon.
50 to 100 years would be my guess.
There isn't an easy way to short cities, but if you could short stock in New Orleans and Miami, I would do that.
Yep.
Oh, Miami too, huh?
Oh yeah, Miami is going to sink. Absolutely. It's basically, it doesn't have 50 years.
Oof. What about Battery Park?
Battery Park is also a challenge. That is more salvageable because it's such a small contained area. But it's there'll be another superstorm that will reveal how vulnerable it is, sooner rather than later.
And so the name of the game that people don't talk about, actually, now that you mention, I actually know a lot about this.
There we go.
People don't talk about, I just don't make money off it, is what's called migration, right? Or retreat. So, Miami Beach is going to be underwater. New Orleans is going to be underwater. Where are those people going to go?
Oh, okay. So the existing cities, are you talking about buying real estates in existing cities right outside of Miami and New Orleans?
For example.
Where they go to.
You're seeing in Charleston, South Carolina, for example, cities are basically doing, it's called planned retreat, managed retreat. And in some areas, you're just not going to be able to defend, and you go back.
No, it makes sense. There's we're Dan and I live in Texas, and there's a town there that's what is it? Is it SpaceX, Dan, that's going to, and they're buying up all these shitty houses there?
Yeah, they were in the news last week when they landed this big Mars rocket back on the ground, and it breaks windows and all the little houses around it.
Brownsville, is that the name of it?
That's it.
Yeah.
But they don't care. I mean, they're buying launch pads. I mean, they can move that anywhere.
Yeah, it's crazy. That's crazy. You guys were awesome. This is the point in the show we get to the Drinkin' Bro of the Week, which is someone who has inspired you or helped you become the person you are today. We'll start with you, Michael. Who would you like to give the Drinkin' Bro of the Week to?
Drinkin' Bro of the Week goes to a teacher and mentor of mine, Carol Rose. Like, she taught me that property was like cool, and that the law is overrated, and that you have to really understand what's happening on the ground and not these big fancy ideas. So everything we're talking about today comes out of work that she taught me as a law student many years ago.
That's awesome. And how about you, James?
Yeah, mine's not personal. It's my brother. It's been 10 years since he died of cancer. Think about him every day. He just, had great sort of grace in dealing with a really sort of crushing turn of fortune.
Man, you're able to say that with a smile, which is crazy to me.
Well, you smile or you cry, so I choose to smile.
Man, That's great. And then the book, mine is out everywhere. Did you guys do the audiobook?
Audiobook is available. Download it on Kindle.
But
We didn't
do it.
We didn't do this. We didn't talk it. Our publisher was like, "You guys, no, we're going to hire a professional."
No.
Is it the British guy? Is the British guy reading it?
Yeah, he's not a British guy. Actually, what's weird is the British edition has an American reader. It's a different reader for the British edition, but he's doing a British accent, although he's from New Jersey. We don't know why they hired him.
That's hilarious.
It's hilarious, yeah.
Yeah.
We have the Vietnamese edition coming out as well. I don't know if that's going to have an audiobook. And the Thai and Romanian, a bunch of Ukrainian. Look for it in Odessa.
Yeah.
I got a quick question for you. I want to do a quick survey.
Fire away.
This is the U.S. cover.
Mm-hmm.
This is the UK cover. Whoops. Which do you prefer?
I would say the one on the right, simply because I'm in books. So if I'm in an airport, you grab the one on the right.
The one on the right has a lock with the word mine. The American version has a slice of pie with a fork in it.
Correct. So the American version on my screen, it's the fork with a slice of pie.
That's the American version. That's the pie is good. Everyone loves pie. Book's got pie on it. I'm going to buy the book.
Do you know why they did the lock? Just out of curiosity, overseas.
We don't know. Listen, they had their own graphic artist design that, and they said, "Here's the design."
I have to tell you, one of the original version had these two hands pulling on each arm of a teddy bear. And it was like, how awful is that image? Because you know how it's going to end up.
Either way, the bear's going to lose his arms. There's weird shit overseas. With these movie posters that we did. Whenever you see the overseas version, depending upon what country it is super wild. They would put like a machete in Danny Trejo's hands if his movie was doing well over there at the time. They would put some Asian was always way off the deep end, where it was just like
crazy. Guys, I have to run. Jim can stay, but I gotta go.
No. We're done here. We appreciate your time, and you guys were unbelievable. Check out the book Mine. It is available everywhere on Amazon and bookstores, and then the audiobook is available as well. Thank you for your time today, Michael A. Heller and James Salzman.
Right.
Pleasure.
Cheers.
Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you. And for Giorgio, D'Anthony Hollaway, I'm Ross Patterson. This is the Drinkin' Bros. Good night, everyone.
To the moon.